Screams of agony ripped through the alien barracks as Taurus crumpled to the dirt, bellowing, "I quit," at the human drill instructor towering over his battered body. The Ocampa soldier had endured months of the most grueling training the galaxy had ever witnessed, finally breaking from the impossible physical and mental strain. Sitting in a dimly lit station bar a year later, Taurus sipped a drink, his eyes still haunted by the trials he suffered at the hands of the human military. The other patrons avoided him, having heard whispers of the horrors inflicted upon any being foolish enough to attempt Earth's combat regimen. As a young Ocampa recruit named Zephyr approached his table, Taurus muttered, "Are you lost, kid? I'm not exactly great company tonight." "You're Taurus, the only Ocampa insane enough to try training with the humans," Zephyr blurted out, his eyes gleaming with admiration. "Please, I need to know exactly what happened. All the other soldiers are too terrified to even mention it." Taurus let out a sigh. "You don't want to hear this, trust me. The things I saw, the pain I experienced, your mind can't even begin to comprehend." "I don't care," Zephyr exclaimed, slamming his hands on the scarred tabletop. "My unit just got orders to deploy to Earth tomorrow. The humans promised to teach us advanced combat techniques, but I'm terrified that—" His voice dropped to a horrified whisper. "Else I'll come back damaged beyond repair, or not at all, like you." Taurus grunted, finishing his drink in one long swig. Leaning forward, he growled, "Listen carefully, I'm only going to tell this once." Zephyr leaned in, hanging on every word. "So what was it like watching the humans run that insane course?" Taurus stared into his drink, the memories flooding back. "It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. The way they moved, the way they pushed themselves. It was almost inhuman." He took another swig, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Sergeant Young was barking orders, pushing them to go faster, harder, and they just did it. No questions, no hesitation." Zephyr's eyes widened. "And the obstacle course, what was that like?" Taurus shuddered. It was a nightmare. Walls higher than any I'd ever seen, razor wire that could slice you to ribbons, and live fire, actual bullets whizzing past your head. He paused, lost in the memory. "I watched as the humans tackled it head-on. They didn't even seem to feel the pain, the exhaustion. They just kept going like machines." Zephyr leaned back, trying to process it all. "And you, how did you fare?" Taurus let out a bitter laugh. "Me, I was a joke. I couldn't even make it halfway through before I collapsed, battered, bruised, and utterly humiliated." He shook his head, his voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. "But the humans? They just kept going, pushing themselves to the brink and beyond. It was like they were born for this, like they thrived on the pain and the challenge." Zephyr swallowed hard, his drink forgotten. "And that was just the beginning?" Taurus nodded grimly. "Just the beginning. The training only got harder from there. Every day was a new test, a new way for the humans to push themselves to the limit. And every day, I fell further and further behind." He leaned forward, his eyes boring into Zephyr's. "You want to know what it was like training with the humans? It was hell, pure, unadulterated hell, and I was the poor fool who thought he could keep up." Zephyr leaned forward, engrossed in Taurus's tale. "So what kept you going? Why didn't you just quit?" Taurus chuckled, a hint of pride in his voice. "I almost did several times, but then I saw how the humans treated each other. They were more than just fellow soldiers. They were family. They pushed each other to be better, to never give up. And when one of them struggled, the others were there to pick them up and carry them through." Taurus's eyes took on a distant look as he recalled a specific memory. "I remember one particularly grueling march, miles upon miles with full gear. My legs felt like lead. My lungs were burning. I was ready to collapse, to admit defeat and beg for mercy. But then Sergeant Young came up beside me. He didn't say a word, just matched my pace and stayed with me, step for step." Taurus paused, remembering the surge of strength that simple act had given him. His presence, his determination, it gave me a strength I didn't know I had. Seeing him there, unwavering, made me realize I couldn't give up. If he could keep going, then so could I. I finished that march, and I knew then that I couldn't quit. Zephyr nodded, understanding dawning on his face. The humans, they didn't just train their bodies, they trained their minds and spirits as well. Taurus smiled, a rare sight. Exactly. Their resilience, their camaraderie, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. They weren't just training to fight, they were training to survive, to never leave a man behind. It wasn't about individual strength, it was about the strength of the unit, the team. Taurus took another sip of his drink, eyes gleaming with newfound respect, as memories of his time training with the humans flooded back. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself changing, he said, voice low. Not just physically, but mentally too. The humans have a saying, adapt and overcome. And that's exactly what I did. Zephyr listened intently, his own drink forgotten as he hung on Taurus's every word. What do you mean? He asked. How did you adapt? Taurus set his glass down, leaning forward. I started to anticipate the challenges, to push myself harder than I ever thought possible. Every morning I woke up sore, muscles screaming, but I pushed through. I ran faster, lifted more, dug deeper, and slowly but surely, I started to improve. Zephyr's eyes widened in surprise. You actually started to keep up with the humans? A hint of a smile tugged at Taurus's lips. He nodded. Not just keep up, but excel. By the end of the training, I was one of the top recruits. I even earned a commendation from Sergeant Young himself. Pride swelled in Zephyr's chest at his fellow Ocamper's accomplishment. That's incredible, Taurus. You must have been the pride of our people. But Taurus's expression turned serious, his brow furrowing. It wasn't just about the physical accomplishments, Zephyr. The humans, they taught me something far more valuable. He paused, collecting his thoughts. They taught me the power of the human spirit, the unbreakable will to persevere in the face of adversity. They showed me that true strength comes not from genetic enhancements or advanced technology, but from the heart, from the bonds of brotherhood forged in the fires of hardship. Zephyr leaned back in his chair, absorbing the weight of Taurus's tale. He had always known the humans were formidable, but to hear it firsthand, from one of their own who had not only survived, but thrived under their tutelage, it was humbling. I can't even imagine, Zephyr said softly, to go through all that, to learn so much only to be rejected by your own people. It must have been devastating. Taurus let out a humorless chuckle. Devastating doesn't even begin to describe it. I was angry, bitter, lost. I had seen the truth, experienced the power of the human spirit, and I wanted nothing more than to share that with my fellow Ocamper. But they weren't ready to hear it. He shook his head, his eyes distant. They called me a fool, a traitor. They said I had been brainwashed by the humans, that I had forgotten my true heritage. But they were the ones who were blind, too stuck in their ways to see the potential in what I had learned. Zephyr could see the pain etched in every line of Taurus's face. It was the pain of a man who had been cast out, rejected by those he had once called family. So what did you do? Zephyr asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Taurus met his gaze, his eyes hard. I left. I couldn't stay, not after what they had done. I wandered for a while, lost and alone, but then I realized something. The lessons I had learned, the strength I had gained, they weren't just for me. They were meant to be shared, to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. That's why I'm here, Zephyr, to tell my story, to show others the true power of the human spirit. Because it's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about never giving up, about having the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when the whole world is against you. Zephyr nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. And that's what you want me to remember, isn't it? That true strength comes from within, from the bonds we forge and the beliefs we hold dear. Taurus smiled, a genuine smile this time. Exactly. The humans, they have their flaws, their weaknesses, but they also have an unbreakable spirit, a determination to always keep fighting no matter the odds, and that, my young friend, is a lesson worth learning. He stood, tossing a few credits on the table. Remember my story, Zephyr. remember what I've told you. And if you ever have the chance to train with the humans, take it. It won't be easy, but it will change you in ways you can't even imagine." With that, Taurus turned and walked away, leaving Zephyr alone with his thoughts. The young Ocampa stared into his drink, his mind racing with the implications of what he had just heard. He had always known the humans were different, that they possessed a strength and resilience that set them apart, but to hear it so plainly, from one who had experienced it firsthand, it was both inspiring and terrifying. Zephyr knew his own training would begin soon, that he would be thrust into the same grueling regimen that had nearly broken Taurus. But now, armed with the knowledge of what lay ahead, he felt a new sense of determination rising within him. He would face the challenges head-on just as Taurus had. He would push himself to the limit and beyond, forging bonds with his fellow recruits that would last a lifetime. And through it all, he would remember the lessons of the human spirit, the unyielding will to persevere against all odds. Zephyr finished his drink in one swift gulp, slamming the glass down on the table. He stood, his eyes gleaming with a new-found purpose. He had a long road ahead of him, a path fraught with pain and hardship, but he would walk it with his head held high, knowing that at the end lay a strength and unity unlike any he had ever known. The strength of the human spirit, the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood. That was the true measure of a warrior, the true essence of what it meant to be alive. And Zephyr was ready to embrace it, to let it forge him into something greater than he had ever dared to dream. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.